Fire provides us with essential warmth and light, but mistreat it and it can become a violent killer. Take a look at any kind of building and the potential for fire is everywhere. To you and me, this looks like any kind of office, but to a fire, it's fuel. It's a fact that fires don't just start, they're caused by carelessness, thoughtlessness or ignorance. Regardless of where you work or live, fire is a very real threat 24 hours a day. And if it's given the chance to start, then it will spread much faster than you could ever imagine. During your normal working day, the last thing you're going to be thinking about is fire, yet it can break out at any time. And if you think it couldn't happen where you work, then think again. Making sure that a fire doesn't start at your workplace can't just be left to chance. That's far too dangerous. Taking positive steps against fire is the only way to ensure that your workplace doesn't end up looking like this. Regardless of the type of business, stopping fires from starting is a job for everyone. Many people consider that fire safety is the responsibility of someone else, or is only a cause for concern when the fire officer is due to visit. But of course that never happens where you work, does it? This video has been produced to give you some insight into just how important your role is in the day-to-day fire safety at your premises. And you don't have to have any special skills to prevent fires, just a bit of common sense. And of course, any training received at work applies to home. For example, how many people can guarantee that they have the correct fuse fitted to every plug? To make this video, we have visited offices, hospitals, factories and warehouses. And whilst these different environments will pose their own unique fire safety problems, they all have three things in common. There is fuel available, there are ignition sources, and there is oxygen everywhere. And these are the three things that a fire needs to start. So in simple terms, to prevent a fire, you need to keep these three things apart. Of course, in the real world, things are never quite that simple. So let's have a look at some of the more common causes of fire and just how they can be prevented. Let's examine some of the causes of fire. For example, smoking. Totally banning smoking can sometimes cause some of the problems it was introduced to stop, as the determined smoker is likely to find somewhere in the quietest corner, where if a fire did start, it would be liable to be able to grow undiscovered. If we'd been making this video 20 years ago, one of the main causes of fires would have been smoking materials, but due to a change in attitudes, this is becoming far less of a risk. Of course, there are exceptions like pubs and hotels. In those premises where smoking is prohibited in the building, then staff will normally be allowed to smoke outside. In such cases, provisions should be made for the safe disposal of cigarettes, to avoid people putting them out in rubbish or dropping them into bins where they might ignite rubbish. There are some premises where it may be necessary to provide a room for those people who smoke. Make sure there are plenty of ashtrays to stop people dropping cigarette ends into waste paper bins or throwing them out of windows. Where a smoking room is provided, it should be checked regularly, and the contents of the ashtrays must be emptied into a non-combustible container, separate from all other rubbish. There are some areas in a building where common sense will dictate that people shouldn't smoke. For example, where flammable gases or liquids are present, or where large quantities of combustible material are stored. Areas like warehouses, stockrooms, or places not normally visited during a working day. Arson, or willful fire-raising, accounts for somewhere in the region of 40% of all fires. The targets and motives for arson are varied. Some of the main motives are vandalism, concealing a crime, industrial sabotage, fraud, or just a personal grudge. And the arsonists range from children targeting schools or action groups with a grudge against organisations like pharmaceutical companies or fast food chains. It's a frightening fact that fires caused by an arsonist tend to be larger because they're caused under ideal conditions, often with more than one fire being lit to create maximum damage. As the arsonist will normally want to avoid detection, these fires are usually started under the cover of darkness. There's so many reasons why people start fires that it would be impossible to cover them all. So we'll just look at some of the general ways of keeping the arsonist away from your workplace. For some premises, the best way of keeping the arsonist out or away from the building is a perimeter fence. This is the first line of defence, and the harder it is to climb, the better. Barbed wire at the top is likely to deter all but the most determined of arsonists. Any gates in the perimeter fence should also be difficult to climb, and good quality locks and hinges are essential. As we've already established, the majority of arsonists attack at night, so well-illuminated fences, gates and entrances are a very effective deterrent. Closed-circuit television recording 24 hours a day is also a good way of putting off potential intruders. The threat from fire does not necessarily have to come from outside your organisation, and a small fire in somewhere like a computer room could be potentially disastrous. Preventing arson from the disgruntled employee or ex-employee can be difficult. For a start, once a member of staff ceases employment, their access to the premises should be stopped immediately. The arsonist will often choose a soft target, such as a hospital or a place that is open to the public, where it's difficult to monitor the people entering and moving around the building. In these cases, the most effective weapon is quite simply for all staff to be vigilant. Anyone who looks suspicious or out of place should be challenged and their presence reported. Areas such as toilets should be checked regularly, as both the fuel and privacy are available to the arsonist. Those premises which are not normally open to the public should have just one entrance, and visitors should sign in and wear visitor badges at all times. Whilst your organisation may have spent a fortune in keeping the potential fire starter out, there is no substitute for good housekeeping. Arsonists require fuel, which they are unlikely to bring with them, so rubbish is usually the most convenient source of fuel. So any combustible materials like skips and pallets should be kept well away from the building, as a fire can destroy the building without the arsonist ever having to enter it. Electricity is something that we all take for granted, but incidents involving electrical appliances and installations account for a large number of fires and injuries every year. With few exceptions, the cause of fire is usually a misuse of the equipment or a lack of maintenance. Just about everywhere you look, there is equipment which needs electricity to power it, but there never seems to be enough sockets available. So this tends to happen, which is liable to overload the circuit, which in turn overheats the cables, which causes a fire. Overheated plugs give off a distinctive fishy smell, which is lethal hydrogen chloride gas, and it's given off when the plastic insulation burns. So if a plug feels unusually warm, or you can smell something strange, turn off and unplug the equipment and report it immediately. If it is necessary to add extra sockets, then a trailing lead, like this one, should be used. Under no circumstances should cables be run underneath carpet or anywhere where they might become damaged. The fuse inside a plug is intended to blow if there is a fault on a piece of equipment, so it's necessary to ensure that the correct fuse is fitted. Whilst it's unlikely that you'll be expected to change a fuse at work, you should be aware that there are 3 different types of fuses available. There's the 3 amp fuse, which is red, the 5 amp fuse, which is black, and the 13 amp fuse, which is brown. As a general rule, the 13 amp fuse is fitted to equipment like electric fires and kettles, and the 3 amp fuse is found on lamps and televisions. The pocket guides which accompany this video will tell you how to calculate the correct fuse and give examples of some of the ratings of electrical appliances. But if you're in any doubt, then consult the manufacturer's instruction manual. Under no circumstances should fuses be replaced with things like paper clips or foil wrapped around a fuse, because if there is a fault, it will continue to heat up until it catches alight. It is not necessarily a fault on the piece of electrical equipment which will cause a fire. Most appliances generate heat and should be kept away from combustible materials. Few people realise that the surface of an ordinary 60-watt light bulb can reach temperatures of up to 127 degrees centigrade, and so would certainly ignite anything stored too close. Whilst the central heating in a building will rarely be a cause for concern, problems can arise when extra heating, like this electric fire or fan heaters, are introduced. If heaters like these are used, it's important not to put them too close to combustible materials or cover them with anything. If the ventilation slots are covered, they can reach very high temperatures very quickly. Many large fires occur when a building is undergoing refurbishment, and even redecoration can increase the chances of fire. In some cases, you may find that the fire sprinkler system and the fire alarm system has been switched off. And if a building is undergoing major refurbishment, then walls and floors might be missing, which will enable the fire to spread much faster. While contractors are in the building, disruption to your normal working environment is inevitable. It's a common sight to see paint tins, tool bags and ladders strewn around the workplace. Fire doors may well be propped open to allow for easy access, and desks may be moved, leaving previously hidden wires and cables in the open. Whilst most fire safety issues relating to contractors will be a problem for management, it is everybody's responsibility to make sure that you're not caught out and that your company's normal standard of fire safety is maintained at all times. Every sector in industry and commerce produces its fair share of waste, and if it's not disposed of regularly, it can present an added fire hazard. So all waste should be disposed of regularly and stored well away from the building to avoid the threat from arson. It's not unusual to find rubbish awaiting disposal stored in corridors or on stairways, but this will obstruct access to fire escape routes, fire extinguishers and fire call points. As we said earlier on this video, most fire safety measures require nothing more than a little common sense and apply to everyone, from the boardroom to the shop floor. Some procedures may vary depending on the type of organisation, but these general rules apply everywhere. All emergency exit doors must be accessible and unlocked while people are on the premises. Corridors, stairways and fire alarm call points must be kept free from obstruction at all times. Fire extinguishers should be available and visible if they are to be found quickly in an emergency. They should be hung on the wall to stop them being moved or damaged. They all have pins or clips like this, which stop them being fired accidentally. If the pin or clip is missing, it should be reported. They should not be used as makeshift door stops or coat hangers. Fire doors must be kept closed at all times. If they are wedged open, they will allow the smoke to travel around the building a lot faster than you can walk around it. Flammable liquids present a high risk. A half-full container of petrol or thinners is more dangerous than a full one, because it's not the liquid that burns, but the vapours that are produced. So large quantities of flammable liquids should be kept in a lockable store. As flammable liquids are often used to start a fire, these liquids should be locked away when not in use. Gas canisters that may seem empty can contain a small amount of gas, which can escape when they're disconnected. So take care there isn't a naked flame nearby, as it could cause an explosion. Rubbish must be collected and disposed of regularly. All electrical appliances, machinery and equipment must be switched off when not in use. Combustible materials should be kept away from sources of heat, such as lights and heaters. The use of flammable liquids and solvents should be kept to a minimum, and any lids or caps should be replaced immediately. Flammable liquids and aerosols should be kept away from heat and out of direct sunlight. It is at night when buildings are most vulnerable. Most fires occur between the hours of 6 at night and 6 in the morning. Make sure that your work area is tidy at the end of each working day. It is important that all electrical equipment is switched off and preferably unplugged, unless it is essential for it to be left on. All flammable liquids must be locked away and doors and windows must be closed. There are so many ways in which a fire can start that it would be impossible to cover them all. In this video, we have tried to show you some of the main causes of fire and how best you can help to prevent them. Preventing fires is the responsibility of everyone, and by making sure that a fire doesn't start at your workplace, you will ultimately ensure the safety of you and your colleagues.